All right, so I'm doing things a little bit differently than we normally do them this morning. If you see your outline in your bulletin, I only have 1 point this morning, and the rest of the blanks, you actually have to do that yourself, so I'm giving you some work today. So today, we're talking about discipline, and so I'll get a little more specific later on what all those blanks say for myself and my family at church. Essentially, what I'm asking you to do is think about those environments and how your Christian discipline comes into play in those environments, or how you would like to see it unfold. So just give you a heads up about that before we get started. You're welcome. So we're continuing our Olympic series today. We're talking about all of the qualities that parallel between Olympic athletes and Christians. And today we're talking about discipline. And so as we think about athletes are preparing for the Olympics, there's a great deal of discipline that is involved as they prepare for their events, as they get ready their bodies, as they get ready their mind to compete. And so last week, Pastor Rich was talking about all of the millions of people who are Olympic hopefuls, and how out of those millions, only thousands get there, and out of those thousands, there are hundreds maybe that actually medal in the Olympics. And all of that requires a great amount of discipline. And so, just as we're talking about discipline, there's kind of two different meanings I think we can give to that word, just to clarify. We're not talking about the discipline like when I was a kid and I had to be home shortly after the street lights came on. If I didn't, then I would get disciplined by my parents. So that's like somebody disciplining somebody else. So my parents would make sure that I remember next time to be home at the correct time. So they would discipline me, they'd ground me, maybe I wouldn't be able to go outside for a week or whatever, get my video games taken away. So that's not the discipline we're talking about. This morning we're talking about the discipline that we do for ourselves. The discipline that we set for ourselves in order to reach a goal. So something that we would intentionally do in order to get better at something or in order to reach a goal. That's the kind of discipline that we're talking about this morning. And so if you know me at all, you might know that there's one thing that I could say, at least, that I'm pretty disciplined in, or I have been in the past, is I disciplined myself at some point in order to play the guitar. So I was disciplined enough when I was younger, especially in high school, to grab my guitar, play it for about an hour a day, until I could eventually just pick it up and look at a chord sheet and play songs. What you may not know about me is that I'm actually also a violinist. And so after learning the guitar, my wife bought me this violin. And at first I was trying to play it. It didn't work very well. But then, my wife got me this violin, so I learned how to play the violin. So that was probably about the 5th time I've touched this instrument. If you couldn't tell. I had a great desire to learn the violin, but I wanted to be able to pick it up and play it just like I could pick up a guitar and play it. I didn't want to put in the work. I didn't want to discipline myself to learn what the tunings of the strings were, what the anything, how to play chords on it. I don't know any scales. I don't even know how to tune it correctly. I do know you have to resin a bow. I did that, so that I actually used it on my guitar. I didn't have the discipline to learn how to play the violin, if you couldn't tell. And so just like I wanted to pick up that violin and play it badly, or just like I called myself a violinist simply because I own a violin and I can run the bow along the strings. Sometimes I feel like it's like that with our Christianity. That we say just because we're saved, just because we said Jesus is our Savior, and then, maybe we come to this building once a week, then we can say that we're a Christian, which is fine. We have to have a starting point. If I really wanted to play the violin, I could, start where I'm at right now. I know how to hold it, kind of. I know to run the bow over the strings. I can move forward from there. But I have to have some kind of discipline to move myself forward. I would intentionally have to pick that thing up every day and practice it. And so I play the guitar, and I've had people ask me for guitar lessons. And usually when people ask me, like, hey, will you teach me how to play guitar? What they're saying is, will you make it so I can play the guitar today? Not will you teach me over a course of 6 months how to play the guitar? And what I say to people is, I would love to teach you how to play the guitar, but how you're going to learn is to practice every day. And so some people can just pick up an instrument like Emily Williams and just know how to play it. Or she has a discipline to learn how to play it. But then some people just, like me with the violin, I couldn't just pick it up and play it, so I'm like, I'm not doing that. So our Christian discipline, what does that look like? It's something that requires effort all day, every day. If there's anything you walk out with today, this morning, I want to send you home with those 4 words. All day, every day. That's something that's really difficult for me. I imagine that's something that's really difficult for you too. As we, as Christians, try to follow Jesus, try to do what He commanded us to do, we're also juggling all of this other stuff in our lives, right? If you're a student, you're going to school, you're doing homework, you're doing extracurricular things. If you're a college student, you have homework all the time, really just a demanding workload of study. If you're a newlywed, or you're engaged, or you're a new parent, you're trying to figure out a new stage of life. You're trying to transition into this whole new world for you. And sometimes when you try to do those things and juggle that along with your Christianity, that your Christian discipline can get pushed to the back burner pretty easily. I know how that goes. If you're a parent, you're taking care of your kids every day, getting them where they need to go. That can be consuming of your time. If you're in the midst of your work life, then your work can become the center focus, and all of the other things can kind of get pushed on the back burner. Or if you're retired, then you kind of get focused on other things, and maybe your Christian discipline can kind of get pushed back. And so all of us need to remember this, that our Christian discipline requires effort all day, every day. And that's really tough. It's really a difficult thing to wrestle with, difficult thing to think about how to implement, or even what that might look like in our lives. But fortunately, the Bible has something to say about it. So in just a minute, I'm going to have us look at a passage in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 7 through 8. So if you want to look at that with me, if you have your Bibles and you want to open them, that's where we're going to be in just a moment, or your Bible apps. So fortunately, God has something to tell us about this. Now, just to give you some context about Timothy. Timothy was mentored by Paul. He was being discipled by Paul. So after Jesus died, Paul is going around planting churches. He's planting churches, and then he's kind of checking in on them, making sure they're doing all right. And as humans do, as we do, they started to mess things up. They started to forget. They had to be reminded who Jesus was, what He did. And so Paul's going around. He's trying to take care of all these churches, but it gets to the point where he can't really do it himself, so he starts to recruit other people and disciple other people. And Timothy is one of these people. And so Paul and Timothy are traveling around, and Paul leaves Timothy at a church, and he kind of preps him for the work he's going to have to do there. And essentially, Timothy becomes a pastor here at a church. What this church is struggling with are things like Gnosticism. They're struggling with the question of, if Jesus was a man, a flesh and blood man, how could He also be God? Or if we really believe that Jesus was God, how could he really be a flesh and blood man that had the same struggles that we did? Did he go to the bathroom? Did he feel sadness? Things like that we struggle with every day. And so they're wrestling with these questions. And in the midst of a letter that Paul is writing to Timothy, he gives him these words of instructions. 1 Timothy chapter 4, 7 through 8 says, "Have nothing to do with godless myths and old wives' tales. Rather, train yourself to be godly. For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come." So there's two sentences here, and I love these two sentences because they're both juxtapositions, right? So the first sentence says, "Have nothing to do with godless myths and old wives' tales. Rather, train yourself to be godly." And so, you know what an old wives' tale is. As my wife has been pregnant, I've probably heard more old wives' tales than I ever have in the rest of my life. So, she's had really bad heartburn throughout her pregnancy, which means lots of hair on the baby's head, right? I don't know where that came from. I don't know if that's scientifically accurate, but everybody knows that because she's had heartburn for her pregnancy, that our kid's going to pop out and have a full head of hair. I wouldn't doubt that from happening, but we'll see. And there are lots of other things with pregnancy. Fortunately, we got to find out the sex early on in the pregnancy, but there's all kinds of theories about how she's carrying the baby and whether it will be a boy or a girl, things like that. And so they're dealing with this. Obviously, if Paul's writing to Timothy, they're dealing with godless myths and old wives' tales. So fortunately for us today, we don't have any kind of outlet where we're hearing false information all the time, right? They're just dealing with this in the whole church. No, not really. We have to deal with that even more now than ever, right? Now that all of us have a device in our pocket, most of us have a device in our pocket that constantly feeds us information, we always have to be knowing whether or not that information is correct. And so what Paul is saying to Timothy here is part of your pastoral duties, part of your Christian duties, is to understand which of these myths, which of these godless myths, or which of these old wives' tales are actually destructive to your faith as a Christian. There's something about training ourselves to be godly that requires us to understand what is a beneficial view of the world, or what we're supposed to believe and not believe. And then the second sentence here says, "For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the one to come." And so again, we have a juxtaposition here. For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the things to come. So Paul is saying here that if you exercise, I think we could put a lot of things in this category. He's saying physical training, but we could say exercise, we could probably say hobbies, we could probably say put a lot of stuff in that category, things that we use to occupy our time. Those things are good to a point, because they're good for us in this life. We're alive now. If you exercise, you go to the gym, you run, you work out, those things are going to help your body now. But focusing on godliness is not only going to help us now in this life, but it's also going to help us in the life to come. And it's going to help us to help others in the life to come, right? And so we have these two sentences put together. One of them has to do with what we believe, how we view the world, and one of them has to do with how we act, and what we focus on, what we actually do. And both of those sentences kind of revolve around this word, being godly or godliness. It appears a few times in these two sentences. So to me, it begs the question, what does godliness mean? And so I think there are a lot of different ways that we can talk about what it means to be godly. we could have a great conversation around that. But for me, how I've come to define understanding that in my life is following three things that Jesus commanded us to do. He commanded us to love God, commanded us to love others, and He commanded us to make disciples. So love God, love others, make disciples. That's pretty basic, right? So those are the things that I kind of hold on to as the foundations of my Christianity or my Christian discipline. And thinking in terms of these two sentences, what do I believe and how does that make me act? Do I really believe that I should be doing those things? Do I really believe that I should be loving God, loving others, and making disciples? Because if I really believe that, then you're going to see it in my life, right? If you really believe in the truth, if you really believe in God's truth, that's going to come out in your life. But if you're believing in godless myths, if you're believing in old wives' tales, if you're believing in some sort of political rhetoric that's being spun right now, that's going to come out as the primary behavior in your life. If you're believing something else besides what God's truth is, it's going to manifest itself in some way in your life. And so what it means to be godly is thinking through how we're loving God, how we're loving others, and how we're making disciples, and how is that coming out in our actions? How are we doing that all day, every day? And I feel like that phrase, all day, every day, is a little bit intimidating, to have to remember to do those things all day, every day. But we do things all day, every day, right? If we have to do it, we'll do it, right? What do we have to do all day, every day in order to live? Breathe, right? We wouldn't forget that. If we forgot that, we would realize it real quick. Or what's something else we have to do every day in order to keep ourselves alive? Eat. And hey, Jesus said something about when we eat, we're supposed to do something, right? Every time we sit down to a meal and break bread, we're supposed to remember what He did for us. And so, as we begin to think about what does it mean to breathe, what does it mean to think about attaching our Christian disciplines to being something as natural as breathing, or as we're sitting down to eat together at every meal, remembering who Jesus is, and it just becomes a part of who we are. And as we begin to do all of these things, it becomes a part of who we are. Everything that we believe, everything that we think, eventually that's going to come out and it's going to become who we are. Paul spends a lot of time in the New Testament talking about identity and finding our identity in Christ. And this is what he's talking about. Are we doing things so frequently? Are we living our lives through Christ so fully that it just becomes who we are? It's not something we do, it's who we are. And so, thinking about these two verses, what I think it means to be godly, what I think it means to believe something and then do it, is I think it means to love God, love others, and make disciples. And there are a ton of things that you can do to build on top of those, but to me, those are the foundational things. So, if those are criteria that work well for you, I would like you to take a moment right now and think about this past week. And I want you to grade yourself. I know this isn't fun. This is difficult. But I want you to grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How godly you are, how well you did with your Christian discipline, how well your faith journey is going, whatever you want to call it. I want you to grade yourself 1 through 10. 1 being didn't do anything at all. 10 being Kevin is trying to get a hold of you so that News 6 can interview Jesus because they think you're Jesus. All right? So I want you to take a moment and just grade yourself from 1 through 10. Think of a number. So for me, thinking on this last week, I'm going to give myself a 6. Let's say I think I did about 6. I was preoccupied with getting a bunch of stuff done around our house, getting ready for the baby, bought a new car this week. I was on the phone with my bank for probably about 5 hours this week. I had a lot of stuff going on that really distracted me from focusing on Jesus, focusing on God. So I'm going to give myself 6. So whatever you gave yourself, what I want you to think about is this coming week. What does it take to move yourself up one number grade? What does it take yourself to improve a little bit? And so these blanks that you have in front of you, for me it's helpful to think of specific instances, because I feel like as I think of specific environments, or I think about specific relationships, then maybe I'll actually do something about it. So these blanks in front of you are kind of specific. So what does it mean for yourself to be disciplined this week? What does it mean for your family to be disciplined this week? What does it mean for you to be disciplined having to do with your faith community here at church? What does it mean to be disciplined at work or school? Or if you're retired, you can scratch that out and write in whatever is applicable. What does it mean to be disciplined as a Christian with people you don't know? As you're out just running errands, going out to eat, going to the store, what does it mean to be disciplined as a Christian interacting with people? What does that look like for you? And so I want you to imagine with me for a second that all of us were able to go out this week and bump that meter up one step. What kind of impact does that have on our church, on our families, on our friends, on our city? What kind of impact does that have on our world? And then what if we all go out this week and we do a little bit better, and then the next week we help a bunch of other people? One of our friends, one of our family members, what if we help them to move that meter up one click? Then what does it begin to look like as our families center around God, as our schools center around God? What would it look like for Lansing to center around God? I think that would be pretty awesome. But it starts with us. It starts this week, starts right now, making the decision to focus on God a little bit more, to take the things that we say we believe and to put them into action. The effort that requires is all day, every day. We have to be focused on God. Maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're a new Christian. Maybe you're an old Christian and you just are in a season of distraction. Maybe you're barely a Christian. So this all day, every day idea sounds really intimidating, really far off. That's fine. The good news of Jesus is, no matter where you're at, no matter how close you are to God, no matter what you've done, starting today, starting right now, you can talk to God and you can say, I'm ready. I'm here. I'm ready to go. Choose me. Help me to be close to you. Help me to impact the world around me. Help me to be better to my family. Help me to be an inspiration to my friends. Help me to disciple my children better. No matter where you're at right now, the good news of Jesus is you can be close to God. Doesn't matter what you've done, where you're at, but today is a new day. God gives us that promise that He's there for us. So this week, as we head out of these doors, as we head out of this building, I want you to remember, all day, every day. Let's help ourselves to focus on God. Let's help ourselves to move our families towards God, move our city towards God. Amen? Amen. All right, let's pray together. God, thank you so much for the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ. You sent Him to die on the cross for us so that we can be close with you. Thank you so much that we have your word to look to for inspiration. I pray that as we go throughout our week this week, we would consider what it looks like for us to love you better. We would think about what it looks like for us to love the people in our lives better. And I pray that you create opportunities for us to make disciples out of people, to help them come into a relationship with you that is genuine, authentic, close. God, we want people to know about you. We want people to know about your hope and your love. God, we pray that you use us. As we leave here, use our talents, use our gifts, use our time. Help us to move from just believing in things to doing things. Help us to discern the garbage of the world in your truth. And so that truth can shine through us, so that truth can impact our world. God, thank you that we have the opportunity to join in and participate in what you're doing in our world. Amen. And I don't think there are any announcements. The deacons are going to lead us for time and offering.